with that down. Oh, and by the way, our friends Campea and Suthius both send in super chat badges. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that, man. With all that down, let's now move on to our fifth and final main topic today. And our fifth and final main topic today gets submitted to us by Eric Vaughn, who writes, "Hey, John and Rob." And Greg is here with us today. "Believe me, I am no hater. I love Marvel and the MCU. I really do. But if I'm going to be honest, I didn't love Wandavision or Falcon or Loki or Black Widow. I didn't dislike any of them, but I didn't love them like I'm used to. It used to be we'd get 2, 3, or maybe 4 MCU projects a year, and the quality was extremely high." Yeah, it absolutely is. This year, we're getting 9 or 10, and it feels like they're overextending themselves and the quality is suffering. I'm worried with them just cranking out more and more and more content. They can't keep the standard high. Am I worrying over nothing, or do you see it too? All right, Eric, thanks a lot for sending that in. And yeah, listen, we have been discussing today already about the fact that we have had a lot of MCU content this year. They just confirmed that on top of everything we've already had WandaVision, we've already had Falcon the Winter Soldier, we've already had Loki, we've already had Black Widow, we now have Hawkeye, and we have Ms. Marvel, and we have Spider-Man, and we have the Eternals, and we have Shang-Chi coming. I mean, that's all this year. That's all just in 2021. I still remember me and John Schnepp one day standing in front of the AMC Burbank 16, looking at an upcoming movie poster and going, man, can you believe that we've got 5 comic book movies coming out this year? That was Disney, Warner Brothers, Sony, and Fox all combined. Holy crap, we got 5 comic book movies coming out this year. Insane. Now Marvel by itself is putting out 9 pieces of content. I can relate with you a little bit because I am like you, and I said this on the show the other day. I'm like you. I am accustomed to when a new piece of MCU content drops, I usually love it. I mean, there was obviously been some that I haven't, but I usually love it. I've found their standard of excellence has been incredibly high. And unlike you, I did love WandaVision. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. But, and I mentioned this on the show the other day, we are now 3 MCU projects in a row that I've not loved them. I've liked them. Falcon the Winter Soldier, I liked. Loki, I've liked. Black Widow, I liked. Maybe even quite a bit. But I haven't loved them the way I'm used to loving MCU projects. You know, guys, when a little old granny makes her chocolate chip cookies by hand, she puts all of her love into it. They're the greatest chocolate chip cookies ever. If suddenly she has to bring in 50 assistants to crank out 5,000 boxes a day to ship out around the world, they're probably not going to be as good as when just Granny was baking it herself, pouring her heart and soul into it, all that kind of stuff. And guys, I remember this. I've mentioned this story before, but this is really important. There was this one opportunity. One of the most fun things I ever did in my career was for the press day for Avengers Age of Ultron. Marvel invited me to come down and be the moderator for it. It was great. I had a great time. It was so much fun. I got to talk to all the cast and everything. But before the event started, Kevin Feige rolled up like 5 minutes before the press conference was supposed to start. And he pulled up in one of those golf carts. You know, he had somebody driving it for him and he was on the phone. And I got a chance to chat with him. So I'm like, how you doing? And the dude was frazzled. He was absolutely frazzled. And I'm like, hey, is everything good? He goes, oh, you know, it's just that just got off the phone about the trailer, the final cut for this trailer that we're working on for this one film. And this is in production right now. And that's it. They had 4 things coming out. 4. And Feige, understandably, was completely frazzled. They've got, between now and the end of 2022, they've got like 17 things coming. And I don't know that you can just change gears going from producing X amount of content at a certain degree of quality and excellence, and then within just a couple of years, triple that output and just expect we're going to be able to maintain that same level of high level excellence and quality that we did when we were putting out 3 films a year or whatever. And listen, 3 things in a row for me is not a big enough sample size. Yes, I've had 3 Marvel things now in a row that I have not loved. Like, I've liked them all, but I haven't loved. That's not a big enough sample size. Granted, that's just a small sample size. Let's see how it turns out. I'm very excited about Ms. Marvel. The ending of Black Widow has got me excited for Hawkeye. Can't wait for Moon Knight. Can't wait for Shang-Chi. Can't wait for Eternals. Can't wait. But, Rob, when you hear somebody bring up the question, though, of when you triple your output, isn't it a real worry at some point that you've got to be at least a little bit concerned, especially in an organization where Kevin Feige is so hands-on, and you're worried that more and more he's got to take more and more of his hands off, and it's no longer as much of his input on everything because he just can't. Isn't it a legitimate fear that when you start putting such a heavy emphasis on quantity of projects you're putting it out, doesn't that run the risk at least of having quality suffer? I don't know. What are you observing, Rob, and where do you think the worries lie?
Well, I mean, it's certainly not production value, and I think all of the
production value has been great.
Yeah, I think that from what I've heard, the Loki series really had to change things around along with Falcon and Winter Soldier because of COVID. And I think that, I think I like Black Widow a lot more than most because I saw the film as an examination of the relationship between 2 women. To me, it was Natasha and Yelena's story and them reconnecting. It was actually a passing the baton film, which I really was there for. And it was like a Bond movie. And if you didn't get that it was a Bond movie, Natasha's literally watching Moonraker, in which if you look at the film, it kind of is Moonraker itself. And as a lifelong Bond fan and a Moonraker apologist, there was so much in Black Widow that I enjoyed that I'm like, I don't see where I love the fact that they shot a lot of it on location. They went to Norway and shot Norway for Norway. They were in Budapest. They were outside. A lot of people, for me, I'm watching this going, wow, this car chase that's down the streets of Budapest. I mean, they did this for real. They're running over real cars. And I'm like, the motorcycle stunts were incredible. So I really enjoyed Black Widow, maybe more than most, I suppose, because it was exactly what I wanted it to be. So despite what's going on with the box office, to me, I thought, let's look at what the film is and let's forget the ideas. Oh, it's female centric. Yes, by design. It was about 2 sisters and their surrogate family. So I thought from that standpoint, it worked really, really well. So I think the quality has not dipped at all. Marvel is developing these projects years in advance. They're finding the best people to work on these. I think more so than any other studio in Hollywood. They're more in tune with getting their creatives and their studio needs in a synergistic relationship early on, more so than any other entertainment company in Hollywood today. So if anything, the intermingling of all these things and making it work and making it all one thing informs another, I think that with the new TV shows, we're in a position to see something that's never happened in Hollywood before. And I'm really excited about it. And while they're trying new and different things, some of it's going to work better than others, I am so there for the diversity. And when I say diversity, I mean the kinds of stories that are being told by the different creators they're employing. And I find it to be an incredibly creative and fascinating thing to watch. And I'm a huge fan. Now, cue all the people that now call me a Disney Marvel shill in my comment sections of my YouTube show and in my Twitter feed. But I think I explained it as best I could about why I'm so excited for the MCU right now.
Greg, I mean, there's no denying by doing all this stuff, especially now with Disney Plus being one of their avenues, it gives them the opportunity to explore a lot of different things, create new types of stuff. WandaVision was unlike anything we had seen in the MCU before. Loki is unlike anything we've seen in the MCU before. It certainly gives them that playground. Our person who wrote on the question to myself, I'm a little bit worried that when you try to crank out more and more and more and more quantity, eventually that's going to lead to a little bit of a quality suffering there, especially with Kevin Feige, who was frazzled after only with having 4 projects on the go. Now he's got like over 20. But, you know, you look at this
Mhm.
Is there something to be concerned about? Do you think everything will return like, when Shang-Chi pops out and it's awesome and everybody loves it? Do you think that resets everything? We always say winning cures everything, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on this right now?
When you first started talking about this, you were talking about how hanging out with Schnepp, and you were like, wow, there's 5 comic book movies a year. And it did bring me back to that time, just with
Right.
Marvel alone, of when we're going, wow, they're doing 2 to 3 movies a year. Isn't that a lot? Isn't that a lot? That's a lot of movies. And now we're at a point where they're doing 9 to 10. And I think when you say that, when you just say they're doing 9 to 10 movies in a year, or like combined with the shows and such, it does. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a lot. It is a lot. It certainly feels like a lot. However, I'm more along the lines with Rob here. I don't personally think the quality is going to dip. If anything, I know you brought that Avengers Age of Ultron experience with talking with Feige. What I've noticed in the conversations with a lot of the filmmakers involved, more so as of late with Marvel, is a little bit different, in the sense of it seems like they're allowing them a little bit more creative freedom. I mean, you still have to abide by certain things with connectivity and, of course, studio mandates and whatever. But I will say that I've noticed a lot more of the writers and directors certainly do express how they were allowed to do a lot more than they thought they would be able to do. And while you personally only loved WandaVision and only liked the other shows, I think generally speaking, when you look at the numbers of critics and audiences, it's been a very positive reception.
Yeah.
Like since WandaVision came out, we have just not shut up about the Marvel shows. It's been like WandaVision every week, Falcon and Winter Soldier every week, Loki breaking numbers. Loki was sensational. And I think what we have to keep in mind is, like, yes, Kevin Feige is the main producer. He's very much hands-on with the projects, but I also think that, yes, while Captain America Winter Soldier is one of the best Marvel movies ever, generally, I kind of think the MCU has just gotten cooler and a little bit weirder and better for that course. I
Right.
love what they're doing. I love everything that they've been putting out. And it's not like all these films are, while connected, they're not all direct sequels to one another. And with that in mind, they're also bringing in different filmmakers. That's part of what I'm loving about
Yes.
what we're seeing with all of this. Like WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier and Loki, completely different filmmakers behind it, and they all feel, look like they're just the whole execution of the structure and everything is just so different. They're all different from one another. And Shang-Chi looks nothing like those, and Eternals looks and feels nothing like those. So I think they're allowing their filmmakers to have a more input, as opposed to like the phase 1 and phase 2 days. I think they're allowing them to have a little bit more creative ingenuity. Because you're talking, you had that analogy about Granny and the cookies and everything, but Granny's just one person. Like these are filmmakers helming these movies with a lot of Kevin Feige and studio input. And from what I'm seeing, I feel like Marvel Studios is just shaping up to just be that. Marvel Studios, the way how Warner Brothers puts out many films and shows a year, the way how all these studios put out many films and shows a year, Marvel's just kind of doing the same thing. Except the difference is it's easy to look at it in this little box of like, oh, they're just Marvel movies, and because they're all connected, but yet they all still feel and look and are doing entirely different things. Sometimes they're sequels, sometimes they're new characters. They splice together different genres. And from what I've seen of the 3 shows, I don't think there's a dip in quality. Whether or not you like them or didn't like them, I think overall audiences and critics are very much gravitated towards them. And the hype and enthusiasm hasn't dipped whatsoever. And like you said, with the whole winning thing, like every time there's a win, we're just more excited. Because I think what Marvel does exceptionally well, like how mentioned in John Campea's documentary movie Trailers a Love Story, we love anticipation. We love the feeling of the sizzle. We like having something to look forward to.
Hell yeah.
And I think what they also do is deliver on that quality product. And I think the last half of the MCU has generally been much cooler than ever before. And so, I don't think it's going to dip in quality at all. I'm loving everything they're doing.
I see. And the one of the things you said, that which was completely true, which is actually the cause of my a little bit of my concern, because as they do expand out, Kevin Feige has to take his hands off more and more, and it's now more like just a regular studio. They're just putting out a lot of different films, and that to me is a little bit of a concern. It's probably the right thing to do, but I think one of the reasons that earlier MCU, by earlier I just mean like 2019. I don't mean like 2014, but like earlier MCU, just a few years ago, that standard, that excellence, that mark was always there because Feige was so directly involved, that because he kept such a close, tight thing on it. I mean, the discussions between him and when Peyton Reed was talking about how, Kevin sits down with everybody. They say, okay, this is what can happen. We need this to happen in this movie, this to happen, this to happen. You cannot do this, this, or this. We really need this to happen. Now, understanding all those parameters, go and put your own DNA as a filmmaker into it and stuff like that. But Kevin Feige was always very, very closely involved, very, very closely connected to it. And he was able to maintain a certain level of excellence. I just worry a little bit. I'm not saying it's going to go bad. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I'm worried a little bit that as Kevin Feige steps away, we're going to see Marvel quality fluctuate, because it's no longer the one standard bearer that really has his hands on it. And if that's the case, then we're going to see more DCEU types of things where some movies are amazing and then a couple come out that are really crappy, and then a really good one and then a bad one, and then a good one and then a bad one. And that's the one thing I'm a little bit worried about. So I agree with everything you said, Greg, about how they're kind of expanding it. And I agree with what you said too, Rob, that this affords them that opportunity to really diversify the kinds of stories they're telling, because that's been one of the big strengths of the MCU. They're always changing gears, not just with the fact that we get a comedy, then followed up by a 70s political thriller, then following up by a borderline horror film, then followed up by this, with whatever you want to call WandaVision, which was so creative. But also they change gears with the stakes. One movie's about trying to save the universe. One movie's about a guy trying to save his family, and that's going to give them that opportunity. But can they maintain that level of excellence that we've come to expect from the MCU when Kevin Feige was able to have more direct control over everything? Now that they're making 10, 11, 12 projects a year, I don't know.
Can I add one thing
Please
into what
do.
you said? I think, though, that Kevin Feige having as much hands-on and control over the situation for as long, as direct as he has been, made a lot of sense. I think, though, that what we've seen in when it comes to leadership, though, as a leader, one thing that I've noticed is that leaders, as they evolve, they get better at knowing how to uplift and find the right people to take over or to continue to carry on, where they don't have to be as heavily involved, where that trust more than
delegate.
Just I trust you. Yeah. And it goes beyond that, though. It's about knowing how to find the right people who can carry on the vision of what the leader kind of sees, but without having to be as directly hands-on. I think part of leadership is knowing how to find truly the right people. And I feel like his skill in that department has probably only gotten exponentially stronger. And that's why I'm not so concerned about him not being as, maybe in the future, directly as hands-on.
That's a great point. Rob, do you have any final thoughts on this before we close it out?
Well, I just think that Kevin Feige he's not going to allow, I mean, he is Marvel Studios. And as they are making, I think for him, they already proved with the Infinity Saga, those 23 movies, they did one thing. Kevin Feige is now doing something else that's never been done, which he's adding television, animation. He wants to prove that over the next decade or 12 years, that he can even expand that empire, because that's the challenge. Can he continue? He doesn't have anything to prove to anybody in terms of how much money he's made, but now he wants to make money and create a tapestry that's even larger. He's given himself, I always wondered, what's he going to do? How do you, once you've achieved the heights that he's achieved, no one's ever made 23 movies with an average gross of $1 billion. Well, what do you do after that? Well, you create an even larger tapestry that encompasses many different mediums, whether it's television or streaming, animation, and feature films, and make it all work synergistically. He's exponentially built out what it is he's creating. And at the end of that, I mean, he'll have a quarter century probably behind him, or even more, of something that has been unparalleled. Let's face it, maybe this is hyperbole, but in human history, no one's ever done no one's ever created an entertainment franchise like this. I mean, by God, I can only wish that somebody at Star Trek has the intelligence and understanding to be doing what Kevin Feige's doing.
Star Trek is doing great, by the way. I just want to make sure I emphasize that. Star Trek is doing great, by the way.
Really?
Besides Lower Decks.
Where's the excitement?
I'm excited.
With that?
I'm excited. I hear from excited people all the time, brother. I hear from excited people all the time. Anyway, this is an interesting topic, guys, because again, when we're talking about the MCU, there is no debate. There's no question here. The MCU is the biggest, most powerful juggernaut when it comes to the world of movies and maybe entertainment overall as it moves on to television with Disney Plus. As they start the expansion, there are going to be pitfalls, but what will those pitfalls be? It offers opportunities for diversifying, doing all types of new, exciting types of stories. It gives, as Greg was pointing out, the opportunity for new voices to come into the MCU as well and really put their stamp on things. But all pros comes with some negatives. It also means we're getting, a little bit less of the direct involvement of the person who's set the standard. Could the quality suffer as we go into greater quantity? Maybe yes, maybe no. It's been too small of a sample size so far to say definitively. So let's see how it goes. Question is for you guys. What do you think about that? Do you think with them tripling their output that Marvel could face an issue of quantity over quality? Or do you think that, no, man, everything looks great so far, the future looks bright? Whatever you guys think, jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys.